If Samsung's Galaxy Watch 5 brings more of the same, then the Galaxy Z Fold 4 and the Z Flip 4 represents even more refinements on an already winning formula. So here are some of our hands-on thoughts with this duo. Thanks for watching 9to5 Google here on YouTube. Remember to thumbs up, hit subscribe and then tap the bell icon to be among the first to watch our upcoming videos. Very much like that Galaxy Watch 5, as I mentioned right up top, the Z Flip 4 and the Z Fold 4 offer minimal upgrades over their predecessors. Samsung's top-of-the-line smartphones, or at least as you'd imagine from marketing campaigns, that their top-of-the-line smartphones are now starting to really mature, and for better or worse, that means very little changes from version to version. In the case of the Z Flip 4, side by side with its predecessors, the Flip 3, and I think you'd be hard pressed to work out which is the brand new device. The chassis is almost identical, with a switch from glossy metal side rails, or two glossy metal side rails, and a matte finish, that being the most notable design change. Clasp and hold and unfold, and apart from a newer stiffer hinge, there's actually nothing to separate old and new models here. Some of the dimensions have changed to a minor extent, and the Flip 4 is now 0.3mm narrower when closed and 2mm shorter as a result, but it's not something you'd instantly notice. Despite minuscule decreases though, there's an increased internal battery present on that Flip 4. Upping from 3,300 mAh to 3,700 mAh could be an important one, as the Flip 3 had a poor battery lifespan, or still has poor battery lifespan compared to Samsung's other Galaxy series flagships. It's not the worst, but it's really interesting to see how this bump will improve things. A good note as well is the inclusion of a 25-watt fast charger support. That will really help this device too, but it is worth noting that that will not come in the box, and we'll have to buy that separately. When opening up, the 6.7-inch 120Hz Full HD Plus AMOLED still looks incredible, and while the crease is not a big deal, it is visible once again. Samsung has not rid it of a crease at this point in time. It's hard to find fault in the display on the Flip 4 though, as it's more of the same, and that is pretty much excellence. Samsung is making flexible OLED panels that few can really compete with, and it's obvious here once again. We did expect Samsung to do more with that outer display, but this is a more or less identical 1.9-inch AMOLED screen that you'll find on the Flip 3 from last year. There are a few new software tricks like software-based face unlock and more functions like full text reply capabilities, but none of these are real reasons to look to upgrade if you do have its predecessor. Even the cameras are practically identical or the same here. The dual rear camera setup consists of a 12 megapixel wide and 12 megapixel ultra wide sensor. The pixel size has increased on that sensor though, from 1.4 micrometers to 1.8 micrometers. It's minor in the grand scheme of things, but that could potentially improve low light capabilities with this camera setup. And then on top of that, the punch hole inside, when you unfold, is the same 10 megapixel selfie camera that you will find on its predecessor. It's worth noting 8GB of RAM still comes as standard, with 128 through 512GB of storage, but the inclusion of the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 is a big upgrade for some people who want the highest level of performance. It's certainly smooth, but it's hard to truly determine how much better this is from the Snapdragon 888 from last year, especially when One UI 4.1 atop Android 12 is practically identical on both handsets. Switching over to the Z Fold 4 though, and while it is fairly similar to its brethren, there are more changes of note on this particular device. Firstly, the outer chassis is almost impossible to separate. However, open up the inner display and the aspect ratio has been tweaked from 5:4 to 21.6 by 18, which sounds very strange in its own right. Bezels on all sides have been reduced, which means a bigger screen canvas to work with. The 7.6-inch diagonal screen inside is stellar, but like the Flip 4, while the crease is diminished, you can spot it at certain angles. Samsung has made a big deal though over the under-display selfie camera, which is harder to spot. It definitely blends in better with on-screen or full-screen content, but it's abundantly clear that the tech is still developing and improving with each passing year. You will notice the under-display camera, but it is less easily noticed, if that makes sense. The outer display on the Z Fold 4 has increased in size too, as well as that inner display. It's now a little wider with a 23.1:9 aspect ratio. It still retains a 6.2-inch screen size diagonally though. The adaptive refresh rate, this is also capped at between 48 and 120 Hz, but the inner display can now drop as low as 1 Hz and is still slick at that max refresh rate as well. Android 12L is fully integrated here into One UI 4.1.1, which takes even greater advantage of that inner display here too, with a persistent taskbar plus some more tweaks that do help make this screen size a little more manageable. Like the Z Flip 4 though, the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 means that this is a top tier Samsung smartphone once again, but with a fleeting test period to really try this out and stretch its muscles, it's hard to tell just how much better the performance will be than the Snapdragon 888 powered Z Fold 3 from last year. A big bonus though is that alongside 12GB of RAM on all models, you can get 256, 512 and now 1TB storage options. MicroSD expansion is missing once again, so it might be worthwhile ensuring that you do have enough storage, and picking the right model between those three will make a big difference. The camera situation though on the Fold 4 is vastly improved this time around. There's a new 50 megapixel main camera, which is a gigantic step up over the Fold 3's triple 12 megapixel setup on the back of that device. This also, for the first time, enables 8K video recording on a Samsung Foldable, with the usual frame rates such as 4K, 1080p, all those resolutions and frame rates available as you'd expect. That's not the only camera upgrade though, as the telephoto zoom lens is now a 3x optical zoom at 12 megapixels and offers 30x digital zoom on top of that. That's another important jump over the average 2x telephoto that comes with the Fold 3, which starts to deteriorate when you really do start to digitally zoom in. The 12 megapixel ultrawide is identical to last year's model and should be comparable as well, given that setup is quite competent in its own right. The same can be said of that 10 megapixel selfie shooter, which as we all know is hidden under the inner display. So while not every area of that camera has been upgraded, this is still the best setup on a Samsung Foldable to date, and we expect it to perform as such when we dive deeper in the coming weeks. So stay tuned for that if you do want to see how this camera performs. Realistically though, as the foldable market slowly and steadily matures, we expected upgrades to slow, but maybe not quite this early on. The Z Flip 4 in particular is such a modest improvement that it actually puts into perspective just how good last year's model is, as one of the few flip style smartphones that you can still go out and buy today. The same can be said of the Z Fold 4. There are more important tweaks on that particular device. The camera is the best it has been to date in terms of raw hardware available to you at your fingertips, and the design has had some little tweaks here and there, but tweaks nonetheless, and there are a number of extra software bumps courtesy of Android 12L included in One UI 4.11. Samsung is certainly serving up more of the same for 2022, and that's fine, as you can't always innovate and improve everywhere with each release, but it does actually make it a little bit easier to stomach if you bought one of those previous generation models. We will have more coverage and more in-depth thoughts about this duo in the coming weeks as we learn more and as we get to spend more time with them. But let me know what you think of the Z Flip 4 and the Z Fold 4 down in the comment sections below. Do you think the upgrades are worth it, or are they just a waste of time? As always though, this is Damien with 9to5 Google saying thanks for watching, and I will speak to you later.